Mr. Bailey being too negative? This is the Governor of the Bank of England, who should surely be talking the economy up. It's in the same week, of course, let's not forget, that we had this global summit at Hampton Court Palace, which the Prime Minister spoke at. And there, JP Morgan boss Jamie Dimon said the UK was doing great and added that he would take notes to show the White House. And fellow Wall Street heavyweight Steve Schwarzman, the boss of investment giant Blackstone, hailed the UK's real achievement in halving inflation and steering away from the subsidy-heavy approach of President Biden's administration. So the question I'm asking you is Andrew Bailey being too negative? I'd like to know your thoughts. Do get in touch. You can email me at farage@gbnews.com or tweet #Farage on GB News. Now, let's bring Kwasi Kwarteng into the conversation, the Conservative MP for Spelthorne and also, of course, former Chancellor of the Exchequer. I'll ask you the question, Kwasi, that I'm asking the audience tonight. Is Andrew Bailey being far too negative?
Well, I think he is being quite gloomy. But of course, he's speaking very honestly. And I have to say about Andrew that I had dealings with him when I was Energy Minister, Energy Secretary of State, and as Chancellor. And I'm actually someone who is a bit of a fan of Andrew. I think he's a very fair guy, but I think he's gone slightly outside of his lane, commenting on what he thinks is going to happen to the British economy. Because, of course, last year he said we were going to be in recession this year, and we weren't.
Yes.
And I don't think he should be a cheerleader. I mean, you said that he should be talking things up. I don't think the governor's job is to be necessarily a cheerleader, but at the same time, he shouldn't really be, casting gloom on our prospects.
Would you say it's unhelpful, Kwasi?
Yeah, I think it is unhelpful. But on the other hand, he's a very honest guy. He's someone I have a lot of time for. He's got a very difficult job. He's been under a lot of pressure. Obviously, we had our relationship broken last year, as it were. But I think it's having been in a similar sort of role, it is a difficult job. But you're right to say that he shouldn't be talking down the British economy.
I mean, I am intrigued by your support for him because, let's be honest, he wasn't Boris Johnson's first pick for governor. Boris Johnson preferred Gerard Lyons, who indeed had quite close links, I believe, to Liz Truss and indeed you. So
that's right.
Why wasn't Bailey Johnson's pick?
I don't know. I think it was Rishi Sunak when he was Chancellor that appointed him, and it is the gift of the Chancellor. But that's happened, and we've got to work with the officials that we have. So I take a balanced view. I think he's a capable guy. He's well popular within the bank, but at the same time, he shouldn't really be essentially talking down the British economy. And I think his remarks this week were in that line.
Look, you copped a lot of flack, didn't you, because of the mini budget imploding and the markets didn't like it and reacted badly. Yeah, sure. But do you believe that the Bank of England has taken enough responsibility for what has happened to the British economy? Obviously, you can look back to the days of Mark Carney, who kept on blaming Brexit for everything.
That's right.
Actually, he should have taken responsibility for historically low levels of interest after the global financial crash and also huge amounts of quantitative easing, which didn't help the economy at all in the long run, did it?
So, look, I think there's an issue with the bank not having any real political accountability. And it does, as you say, have huge amounts of power. It's quite right that they should be impartial, if you like. They should be officials that get on with their job. But the problem with all of that is that given the powers they exercise, there's very little sort of democratic oversight, even scrutiny of what they do. And in a way, that's the Chancellor of the Exchequer's job. But it is difficult when the governor's saying, he doesn't think the British economy's prospects are very good. That makes the politician's job that much harder.
I wondered what your reaction was to this pay deal with NHS consultants, around 9%. We've also seen in the autumn statement that the national living wage is going to go up. Won't both of these measures fuel inflation?
Well, I think it's a broader point than that. I think inflation is probably going to be difficult, as the governor said, to deal with, because you've got, more shocks in the system. Oil prices have gone up partly because of the Hamas attack in Israel that you were talking about, appalling terrorist attack. There's a lot of geopolitical volatility, uncertainty. And I think the governor was right to say that the fight against inflation is difficult. But at the same time, I think that, we should be very focused on what is going well with the British economy. I think the investment summit has gone well. I think clearly, it's nonsense that Brexit's been a disaster. We're growing, as the Chancellor pointed out, faster than Italy, France, and Germany. So how you can say that Brexit has been a bad thing when the three biggest economies in Europe are facing recession and doing worse than us seems completely absurd.
I thought I would ask you as well, actually, about some of the debate that's currently taking place about immigration. And obviously, on one side of the argument, there's this argument that if you bring more people in, then there are more people working and therefore the more people paying tax, and it kind of grows the British economy. But on the other hand, of course, we are seeing huge pressure on our public services. I think there was a report out in the week suggesting that we'd have to build 500,000 homes a year just to keep pace with the numbers coming in. You'll be familiar with that 745,000 figure that was released by the Office for National Statistics last week. That was covering legal migration to the end of December 2022. Is immigration good for the economy or not?
I think it's got to be an immigration that works for the UK. And that's why, personally, I've always found a points-based system attractive. You've got to limit the numbers, and also you've got to have some control of the abilities, the quality of the people coming into your country so that you can benefit from that. I think the numbers and the people that they're kind of what they bring to the table, I think it needs to be examined. Clearly, the numbers are way in excess of anything that we've stood for, in a general election on, and we need to have more control over that. And even the Prime Minister himself, Rishi Sunak, everyone in the government seems to be concerned about the scale of that immigration.
Although the government doesn't seem to be a nest of singing birds. We've had some conflict between Robert Jenrick and indeed James Cleverly, Home Secretary and his immigration minister. James Cleverly is saying that this Rwanda plan isn't the be-all and end-all when it comes to cutting illegal immigration. There's also the Prime Minister on one hand talking about handing out student visas, meanwhile concerned that students are bringing in too many dependents. There's also been this row between Suella Braverman and the Prime Minister about whether to put a 40 grand cap on people coming in as skilled workers. Would you advocate a cap, Kwasi?
So look, I think a cap and also some sort of point system does make sense. I know Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman well, and I think their general approach was a good one. And I'm not privy to the disagreements they've had with either James Cleverly or if that be the case with Rishi Sunak. Clearly, Suella had been in the department for a year, Priti Patel before that. Robert Jenrick's been there for a while as well and has got experience. And I think his approach was probably a good one.
Kwasi Kwarteng, thank you very much indeed for joining me this evening.